Guys, so welcome today to our podcast. Today it's called Question Everything. And we're in history class with Professor Hunt, and we're just going to talk about what things did Hollywood change to sell their movies and the historical accuracies and all that good stuff. So I'm Alexia.
I'm Isadora. I'm Jessie.
I'm Frankie.
And today we brought each of our own movies to come and discuss and put on the table and just rip apart. So Alexia and I did Marie Antoinette, and basically that movie was just about the lifestyle and the glamour and all the kind of things that the people thought that she was really doing with the money.
A satirical look.
Yeah.
A satirical look. Because there's no way in heck Kirsten Dunst can pass off as the Marie Antoinette in real life.
I know, especially since she came to France as a little kid, and then she got married and appointed queen at like age 12 or 13.
Which the movie doesn't say anything about.
Yeah,
It looks like
the
she's
only
a
historical thing that was accurate was him saying that we are too young to rule.
Right.
But they look like teenagers right there.
Very questionable casting.
Yeah. And
actually, that's what I had gotten messed up on, because I don't know a lot about history, sadly. But when I watched the movie, I'm like, wow, this woman is portraying and doing all of these fun things in her country. But then they're using all this money. Keep going.
It just kind of seems like she's spending and spending and spending. And
yeah, and especially since
they're not showing you where it's coming from, right?
Yeah.
Does she have an infinite bank? Is there money trees in the back of the palace? Like, is she going back and be like, oh, I'll take back $400 and then I'll buy blah, 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 blah. You know, no. Doesn't tell you where all this money is coming from.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of history. Sophia Coppola just kind of played around with the notion of, oh, I'm going to kind of make this into like a teenage love story.
Yeah,
right, and that's what it seems.
There is one thing though, is that they really did keep accurate the traditions, and when she gets out of bed every morning and the routine that they did, that is true. That they stuck to that. They stuck to how the palace looked and all the historical accuracies with that. Another issue is the accents. The kids, the only one with the French accent. And also back to
the King of France.
Exactly. The most American accent.
No, you're not. You're the guy from Men in Black. Right? That's
Yeah.
all that's the guy from Men in Black.
That is one thing that I think that movies actually kind of do, is, you know, you see one actor or actress and you're like, oh, okay. Because like, you say Men in Black, I saw Kristen Dunst and all I saw was Interview with the Vampire.
All I saw was that cheerleading movie.
I didn't even recognize him, to be honest. To be really honest.
And there was another gal from Saturday Night Live, I don't know if you guys had noticed, that she was one of the court people that kind of stuck her nose up at the girl, didn't really like her, Kirsten Dunst, I should say.
That added to
Was she
the
the one with
element.
the
She was the Molly Shannon.
Yes.
And she was in the first portion of the film. She kind of disappears around the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what happened to her. Another fault of the movie, it doesn't explain what happens to some of the characters. They just kind of disappear.
Exactly.
You know what? I didn't think about it. You're right. There were a lot of missing details as to what was happening to people, although obvious statements, you know. But I didn't recall.
But the film was fun. It was a fun movie. It was a fun
If
movie.
you take our lens off of it, it is a good movie. And I will say it is very romantic. And even though that affair, it wasn't that open. There was no way other people around would even be in that same house while they're doing it, because they could not risk people knowing that, especially when she was trying to produce a boy. So, and you don't really have accurate pregnancy tests back then, so you don't really even know one of the kids, you know? So, it's just really crazy how many liberties have been taken as to her story. They completely over-glamify it, they romanticize it, and it's just completely ridiculous.
Right.
I thought it was a good movie too.
Like,
it was fun, but after I watched it, I was like, wait.
And especially the music choice too. They had the Strokes, all these.
I love
it.
music choice.
Yeah, it's good, but when they played the French, the harpsichord, I think it's called. When they played that, it sounded kind of like jarring, because I'm like, okay, you're sticking to these 2000 age music, but then you're going to bring in the harp harpsichord, and then it's like, it's kind of like it hurts in a way.
They had to modernize it in some way, and when you mention it hurts, you're absolutely right, because it hurts history.
Yeah. And also the viewer, because it's like you're trying to stay in this world, and they're like, it's a really good portrayal of everyday life right there in the castle. But then you hear these new age music, and then you're just confused, like, okay, like, this what
Here
is
is that.
happening? Exactly.
I don't think they would be listening to that kind of music.
No. Well, in conclusion, films like that, it kind of pushes the viewer to want to learn more, because they say to themselves, is this what really happened? Did you really eat this much cake?
Yeah.
If you want to let them eat cake, how are they if she ate it all, right? There's no more cake. There's no cake in the kingdom. It's gone. The cake is gone. And then,
That's what
and
everyone's
she's eating
upset over.
donuts, and she's eating all this. Where did the donuts come from? Was there a Happy Donuts there that we didn't know about?
I don't know. And then especially the ending, they totally sugarcoated what happened. Just
What?
rode off into the sunset in their carriage, trying to flee the castle. They only showed the demolition of their royal bedroom, and then that was it. And then it was the end. They completely just left the guillotined part when their family is murdered. And also they had another kid. There were 4. The baby died. There was actually 1 more.
Oh,
But they
wow.
only had 2 in that carriage.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of history that I didn't quite know, especially looking here and based on the movie. But there are a lot of movies out there that start off being historically fact, at least you think when you're going to sit down and watch it. For instance, your movie, JFK.
Yeah, the Oliver Stone classic. The Oliver Stone classic.
Yes.
Released in 1991, a screenplay by Oliver Stone and his partner Zachary Sklar, I believe his name was. Based on 2 books. One was called On the Trail of the Assassins by Jim Garrison. The other one was called Crossfire. It's the plot that killed Kennedy. Jim Mars. Unfortunately for JFK, though, both these books are entangled in conspiracy. And unfortunately for us moviegoers, Oliver Stone loves conspiracy. Loves conspiracy so much so that he won't care to not hold back and not saturate his film with so much inaccuracy. In this film, I don't see a lot of truth, which is unfortunate, because a lot of the films that we're watching, that you guys are watching, there's some fiction, but there's a little bit of truth to it. With this film, I look at it as mostly 80, maybe 85, 90% conspiracy.
Basically, he was shot. That's
Yeah.
probably
The only truth that I see are the characters that are being portrayed. That's the only truth that I see.
Yeah.
He accuses the Warren Commission of tampering with eyewitness reports.
Exactly.
He accuses the CIA of threatening witnesses into saying something else. And then the entire part with Donald Sutherland's character, Mr. X, with that entire section, Donald Sutherland sits down with Kevin Costner's character. Now, Oliver Stone sets up this scene to make it seem like it's 100% factual. But in this scene, he is accusing the CIA, he is accusing the FBI, he is accusing the mafia, he is accusing the military construct, he is also accusing the vice president himself of the assassination of Kennedy. The way he films it, it makes it look so real.
Yeah.
It makes it look so real.
It was frightening.
It was scary. To the point where you have to ask yourself, did this really happen, and where did he get this information?
Right. I remember, so I've been to Dallas, I've been to Dealey Plaza, and I just wanted to do the walk and see exactly where everything was. I stood right where he was shot. And then watching that film, my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is really intense. I mean, like, why isn't anybody investigating this? Like, right now, why haven't I heard about this?
Yeah.
And then sadly, I come and I talk to you, and you're like, yeah, half this film is fake.
Mm-hmm.
The only truth about the film is that he died that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and everything else is speculatory.
Mhm.
So that's very scary towards me, because unfortunately I like movies and I like the visual aspect of it, and that's your film out of every other film that we're discussing today. I believed,
Mhm.
and I'm one of those moviegoers that, you know, history people really probably don't like. Don't watch the movies for history.
I like that too.
Yeah, I will say that movie was tough to get through. I mean, just the 3 hours alone when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is going to be a journey. And then I just felt that their delivery and the way that the characters are portraying their characters was kind of like bland and mellow. So I felt that was the tone I was going for, and then it did kind of pick up when it started to get more and more intense. But then again, in the back of my mind, I'm like, most of this stuff isn't probably real. So I think that was my thing with that movie.
Right, but it brings up a really good question.
It brings up
Is it
a lot.
real?
Yeah.
Is it not real? I
Yes.
know it's a lot of entertainment, but
It's a great example of using a lot of inaccuracy in order to sell a film.
Yeah,
If it wasn't Oliver Stone doing it, it wouldn't have worked.
exactly.
But it was Oliver Stone. He could do that. He could put all of that. He could make it into some other thing, but it still works.
yes. And I think incredible director, but you know, the history makes me want to go back and read more about what.
Yeah.
That is
happened.
true.
Just like with
Yeah,
Marie
it-
Antoinette, you want to go back. And
Yeah.
It does
And
inspire
that's-
you to really look back on it and think, does this really fit or not?
Mhm.
And see what exactly was the truth. That's what that
Yeah,
movie does.
I think those movies, they kind of get you confused because you're like, what is true, what is not? Especially like myself, like I don't know anything about American history. The presidents like JFK, I don't know anything. So I saw the movie and I was like, all right, I really still don't know what happened because it doesn't like.
Not very clear.
Yeah.
It's not very clear, you know. This film was very personal to Oliver Stone, because when the Warren Commission came out with their findings, he felt like it was a fictional narrative to what he really felt happened. And a lot of other people felt the same way. When people read the Warren Commission, they thought, oh, there's something else here. You know, the government may be hiding something. Oliver Stone took that and just went to a massive extreme with JFK.
Yeah.
A major extreme.
Mhm.
So extreme that even the news themselves, like all the newspapers themselves, had put out special articles damning him, saying that you have taken royalties with history, you've kind of made it your own, and you've basically said that the government doesn't know how to handle situations like this. Yeah. Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone. He
Yeah.
is the man. Oliver
Yes.
Stone. Now, your film, speaking about presidents, your film,
Oh.
The Vampire. Yeah.
Great.
I've been prepared because
Oh, boy.
What is your film?
So my film is about President Abraham Lincoln. Great man, great man.
honestly,
What did he do?
He hunted man.
That's the history that you people don't know.
He's
okay?
a vampire.
He was a vampire slayer.
Yes, before his day, that's what got him into the presidency.
Could you explain to us like how the vampire thing was set up? Like what are the rules and like how did he even get into it?
So, it's funny you say that because back whenever his father was working in the film, back when his father was working he saw one of his buddies. One of his buddies was actually getting, I would say, assaulted by his owner,
Right.
a slave. He actually wasn't necessarily a slave. There was free slaves still out there, but he got very upset. He took an axe to him and tried to kill him, all that fun stuff, but later found out that, later in the film, he tried to go and revenge his death, not his death, but revenge.
Oh, that's it, yeah.
Go seek. And,
Because the owner of that store was a vampire, and as revenge for hitting the little black kid was to kill his mom. So
oh,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
that's right. So then he had to avenge his fella, and the death of his mother. And that's whenever he found out something evil was happening. Whenever his mother, in the film, it showed that his mother was
Yeah.
going ill or becoming ill
I think
by
it's-
something that man was doing to her.
Yeah, I think they denoted it as plague or something.
Well, yeah, because his son died. I mean, in real life, his son had died from a plague.
What about his mom?
No.
Do you know anything about his actual family history?
Not based on this film.
And
I
one
know
thing
that-
about his kids is that he has 4. And in this movie, they only focus on one kid.
That died.
That does.
Yes.
But there was
His eldest
no
child.
evidence. There was no evidence or implication that there are other children.
His eldest child, his firstborn, ended up being very, very, very powerful in politics. But that was the only child that had survived. The 3, I believe he had 3 siblings, and they all had died young of disease.
Right. And that's
Vampire
attacks based on this film, but
Based
it
on
was
this
a
film.
plague, like you said.
But the way how the movie portrayed it is that there was only one kid and he was the only one who died. And so that was the inspiration for him to pick up the axe again. So if I hadn't have looked up how many kids he actually had, based on the movie, I would have thought he only had one that died young.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then I just learned that 3 of his kids died young. So why didn't those murders inspire him beforehand? Because
Maybe in the film, because it's all about entertainment and they don't have an infinite amount of time like JFK's movie of 3 hours, they had to splice some things. And unfortunately, in a lot of movies that you watch within history, JFK being one of them, I guess, and all of our other films, you kind of lose track of what the history is because you got to condense it into that little bit of space.
You don't have very much time. You just have an hour and a half.
Yeah,
maybe
right.
hour and 10
you
minutes.
always have to
Yeah.
put through a narrative and a plot and the subplots, and then you're just like losing track because he would have only been a vampire slayer if he hadn't met Henry in that bar.
Right.
And then he says this famous quote like, what was it? A man only gets that drunk when he wants to kill a man or something.
Kiss a girl.
Kiss a girl.
Yeah.
I
Kiss a
thought
girl
that
and
was
kill a man.
But I will
think it
say
is.
there are a lot of continuity errors for me in that movie, especially with the whole vampire world. because
That's
it got me
huge.
mad. It got me really mad how they didn't stick to their own rules that they made for it. Like for example, I mean this is kind of off track, but like you know how when he turns Henry to kill his wife, and then Henry wants to kill the dude who just killed his wife, and then he's like, oh, you can't kill other vampires. That's the rule. And at the end of the movie, at the train, at the climax, they're hitting each other with the intent to kill each other. Like, oh,
There's
there's
no
no
observation.
Yeah.
That is a very good observation. I didn't even
Like
catch
his
that.
knife was like turned
Yeah,
around.
it
like,
was literally not. And then at the end, when he comes to help Abe, they're just like bashing each other with a chair.
But yet the knife couldn't touch you.
Yeah, it's just.
I like to bring up the subject of the axe. One of my favorite
Oh, yes.
parts, we talked about this earlier, was he starts off as a vampire hunter, but then you see a transition from the vampire hunter to the political genius that he was, and that transition happens when he puts on the top hat.
Yeah.
He takes the axe, he puts it away, and he puts on the top hat. That's kind of when the movie switches focus from a fantasy type of element to more of a real world narrative, more of a historical narrative.
Like this is what he really did.
He's
at
not a
this point.
vampire hunter. Now he's becoming more of a political minded. He's trying, instead of cutting people's heads off with an axe, he wants to do it with diplomacy.
Yeah.
And
And
what he learned.
I do commend the movie for trying to tie in the Gettysburg. And the reason why they needed that many supplies was because they're all vampires. I do commend it for that. But I still, it's such a stretch.
It is
And-
really way out there, but I mean, you go from, in my own opinion about it, is you go from JFK, where I seriously believed this, and it made me mad. But then I go and I watch Abraham Lincoln, and it does make one angry, because it's completely off topic, off of history. But yet, you know.
But
I mean,
again, it's fun. It's like Marie
Yeah.
Antoinette. It's fun.
If
It's
you do take
entertaining.
off the lens, it is a pretty
Right.
good narrative.
Yeah, you see your
Not
president
bad.
jumping over horses, running horses.
The only problem with me is that the Mary Todd, the actress, she was in Sky High. So all I could imagine was that.
Oh.
Yeah. And
See,
then,
that's again, we were talking about I see vampire, what is it? Kirsten Dunst and an interview with the vampire.
I see Rip Torn and I see Men in Black. Right? Yeah.
And then when we come to your movie, all I can see is Batman.
I can see Batman. That's all I see.
Wait a minute, you guys said that. I'm like, wait a minute, what movie did you watch? Who's Batman?
She did Pearl Harbor.
I know.
Ben Affleck.
Ben
He's a
Affleck,
new.
yeah.
He's a
He's
new.
a
Batman.
new one.
There
I've
was
not seen that
one
one.
guy named Christian Bale, and now
It's
it's Ben
way younger on Pearl Harbor though.
Yeah, but
Yes.
still, it's like, it's just, do you want to?
Speaking about Pearl Harbor,
Yeah.
let's discuss Pearl Harbor. Now
Yeah.
we're on the subject. The Michael Bay epic. Let's talk about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, especially that director.
So Pearl Harbor, when you hear like about the movie Pearl Harbor, you think it's about the attack, but the attack is really like the background story. Everything's about like this couple of friends that they join they fly airplanes and they get into the air. How do you say it? The Navy.
Air Force.
No, they got into the Navy.
Oh,
Air
yeah.
Force, yeah.
Air
So they get into the Air
Force.
Force together, and they end up falling in love for the same girl, which is a nurse at the army.
Played by Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the love story between I forget Ben Affleck, his character with the girl character. It was such a nice story. It was truly romantic. And then they go he goes away, and then he ends up getting killed. I was like, thank God, finally they're sticking to something that would make sense. He's gonna stay dead, he's dead. And then they bring him back right after Danny has his way with his ex-girlfriend, she's pregnant. Let me say how much drama was created, and I just got so mad. It's
The
like,
problem is that they make his character like so cocky that you hate him.
Yeah.
You're like, I can't believe he's back.
yeah.
I wanted him to stay with Danny.
Yeah, like he needed to, like with Titanic, Jack needed to have stayed dead. And Ben Affleck should have stayed dead. But since they brought him back, I guess like the whole climax of when okay, can we talk about the actual Pearl Harbor bombing?
So that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Like, what is the historical truth of this movie? You know, sure, we have Air Force. Sure, Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody talked to it, even in that movie, that we got to start watching this area. I think if I was any other of our competitors, I would be like bombing this area.
Yeah, and especially since that one guy apparently in the like special unit of the government was like, Pearl Harbor's the place. And they're like, do you have any actual proof? Because you're stupid because if you don't have any proof. And
Do you have actual data to prove that?
And
Yeah,
it's
no.
just
It was like
crazy.
it was an assumption, I think, because they were listening to the Japanese radio conversations, and they knew that they were gonna attack like either San Diego, San Francisco, or Pearl
Somewhere
Harbor.
along the coast. And
Yeah.
why wouldn't it be Pearl Harbor? They just had new fleets, a whole new ramification of their program. Why wouldn't it be there?
A lot of that isn't discussed in the film. The
Exactly.
exact reason why Pearl Harbor was bombed.
They just kind of just show the Japanese. Their motive was they cut off our oil and other supplies. That's why they want to fight them. And it's just ridiculous how this movie just kind of left it to that. And then the movie kind of made me believe that the Japanese actually had that upper hand of surprise. Although I don't believe that it took that long for anyone to respond to the bombing, because the movie made it seem like it had been a good hour before Danny and Ben Affleck went to a plane and started fighting back. Or any other people to come. Like if the president found out within like 20 minutes that Pearl Harbor was happening, why couldn't they call another, like the Marines or someone else to come and help?
Well, the message they sent to Pearl Harbor got in like an hour after the
Yeah,
attack.
that's true. But
That is true.
other people knew that it was happening already.
They knew, but they were like guessing. So it was all like based on guessing.
It's just, if you think about it, like Hawaii's like, what, 5 hours to fly to from here? The presidents in the United
is talked about in the film is real. And they leave the theater with the sense that we are living under some weird shadow government and that we cannot trust the people around us.
I'd have to agree with you 100% because I'm one of those.
Exactly.
I was one of those that watched this film, never seen it. I think I did see the trailer when it came out initially, but when I sat down and watched the film, I thought I was going to get some sort of action-packed, talking about JFK and the death, but it actually, yeah, there was a portion of this film that did talk about that. But then it opened up exactly what you said. This huge conspiracy theory about what the government may have done or had done. Did they do it? Did they not do it? It left me believing that it could happen. It seriously could happen, that the government could have done something, or that the CIA could have gone in and killed the president. Who knows? Who knows? Is that because they have so much power over us? That's how it left me feeling. I was like, I seriously thought, well, maybe we should think about the power that we give people, because it really scared me.
And for me, I had the lens on of, this stuff is all like made up, like this cannot be true. So when I watched it, I was like, oh my god, that's a lie. This can't be true. Well, how can this and that? But then I did a little bit of research, and some did line up, but it was a lot of fabrication for me.
Because you were born here and you know the history about the president. I particularly didn't know anything about the president, and when I watched the movie, I was like, what?
Whoa.
What is this country doing to themselves? What am I
I
doing
never
here?
heard any of this in
Who
history
lets
class.
the country run its own country? Like, how do you get this? Like, why?
Oh boy, it was scary because, I mean, you think about...
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I'm just going to say that it could be dangerous. It could be dangerous. Presenting a film like that, the way Oliver Stone did, it's dangerous, because then people start to actually think, what's going on here? Should I trust the government?
Is there any accuracy though in the movie?
Only the characters. Only the characters that were portrayed. And I think some of the situations, I think about 20% accuracy, maybe 70% conspiracy. Or I would even say 10% accuracy, maybe 80% conspiracy. And the problem with the movie was you cannot tell the difference between historical fact and blatant conspiracy, because he presents it all as fact.
Yeah.
And this conspiracy theory in it was actually, I mean, thoughts that people did have.
Yeah.
I mean, they were scared when it truly happened, when JFK was killed. There were a lot of people that did not agree with his policies, but then there were a lot of people who did.
Yeah.
So the thought of somebody actually coming in and shooting down the president was not that far-fetched. So when I watched the movie, it was pretty scary that, yeah, it could have happened. And I actually have gone to Dealey Plaza, and I've seen the location, and I've stood where he was shot. So the reality of it is pretty scary for me to see. That's why, I mean, coming from somebody that doesn't know a lot about history, but, you know, I do know that little bit of history. But movies can really spin the way we see it.
What do you think? So what do you think about the Abraham Lincoln being a vampire? Since you don't know much about
We're talking about scary things.
Talk about silver
Let's talk about a
axes.
really scary thing.
So,
Let's talk about Abraham Lincoln.
Let's
killing
talk
vampires.
about vampires.
Let's talk about vampires.
History has it that Abraham Lincoln may have been a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
And so my film is Abraham Lincoln, the vampire hunter.
According to Hollywood, he may have been a vampire hunter.
According to Hollywood, but you know, this film will give you some your own opinion. So, basically, Abe, he had worked on the docks with his father. This is where the plot began. And he actually worked on this dock. Actually contained, the owner of the dock was the vampire. His boss was actually this vampire fella that we didn't at the beginning of the movie know that he was a vampire. Until later, of course. But Abe had seen one of his buddies. He's an African American fella being abused by the boss. And he comes over there and he's gonna, I'm gonna show him. Yeah, is he really going to show him? Later in life, as the young lad, Abraham Lincoln gets older, growing up, he wanted revenge for his friend. So he had met a friend, Henry, in this film,
Mhm.
at a bar,
Mhm.
and he turns to Abe and he says, "You're either gonna kiss a woman or you're gonna kill a man if you're gonna get that drunk."
Mhm.
May have vice versa
Mhm.
there, but point is taken.
Yeah.
So he then takes it upon himself to train Abraham Lincoln to be a vampire
Mhm.
hunter. And Abraham Lincoln, you know, wanting to free the slaves and wanting to be the good person that he is, set out to defeat all these
Mhm.
vampires. And he came out and he defeated the vampires in the movie.
Yeah.
In the movie, I will mind you. But he did become a president in the United States. The biggest pivotal moment, I think, in that movie, Frank, you've said it many times, is when he picks up that axe, or actually puts down that axe in the movie. It's the most pivotal part of it, where he puts down the axe and becomes the American president, or president of the United States. Now, was Abraham Lincoln truly a vampire hunter? I think he probably was.
Maybe, maybe
I would
not.
like
Who
to
knows?
live that.
Maybe he has secret history,
It
but
would be a really cool thing to say. We had a president kill
it was
vampires.
yeah, it's
Oh yeah,
fun.
you watch
but
that movie,
it's
he's
fun
like
to
jumping
think about.
over running horses.
It's
running
fun.
on
It's
there.
fun.
Train on
It's
fire.
fun.
Okay,
You know,
let's get it.
It's a movie that's made for profit.
Yeah.
You're not going to learn anything from watching
There's
it.
a lot of
Like,
but there
It
are
makes
some
you
truths.
smile, and there are some parts of the movie where you're like, yeah,
There
go
are
get 'em.
truths.
I do commend the movie for tying in the vampire world into the actual real world.
I do too.
Like they
Yes.
made the motives that related to the vampires to actual history.
Right.
Like for example, he actually has 4 kids, but the way how the movie portrayed it, it seemed like he only had 1.
Mhm.
And then this one kid died just like the mom did when he was a kid.
Abraham's mom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's just crazy how they made it seem like that was that. And then when the Gettysburg, they needed all these extra supplies because they were losing. They made it, they're indestructible vampires.
That's why they were
So
losing.
that's why Abraham needed to send the funds to Gettysburg. They didn't really touch on his route to becoming president.
Mhm.
They only had him speak once in Springfield, and then next thing you know, he's the president.
The root of his, in this movie, the root of it is him putting down the axe and putting on his hat.
That's the
Yeah.
that's the
That's
pivotal moment that the movie goes from fantasy to reality.
Right.
He puts away his axe. I'm not killing vampires anymore. Now I'm going to start doing things politically.
Politically.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I really liked how they tied in, the filmmakers tied in the vampire aspect with the actual Civil War. They made the Confederate soldiers vampires.
Mhm.
I think that was cool because you still had the history, but
Right.
you had that
Fantasized.
fantasy element in it.
It's like
And how did
telling
they
a-
defeat them?
Yeah.
The silver and the
silver.
gold.
It's
Exactly.
like telling a kid history. You kind of make it interesting for the kid to understand
Mhm.
how it actually went. And I just want to say there was a lot of errors with the plot itself, especially with the whole vampire aspect of it. It's like Henry only made Abraham a vampire hunter so he could kill them, because Henry couldn't. So the vampire the main guy, the head honcho, made Henry's wife, he killed Henry's wife, made Henry a vampire, and vampires can't kill other vampires, so that's why he made Abraham a vampire hunter. But at the end of the movie, the head honcho, and Henry are just fighting each other like to the death, and they can hit each other then. So that was one big thing that I got really mad at. Because they really did keep it together. There were rarely any plot holes or continuity errors, but then there's just that one.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, why you gotta do this?
Yeah, it was the same with JFK with all those inaccuracies.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun though. You know, it's necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because it makes people want to go out and actually learn about what they were watching. Did JFK really, or was JFK really a victim of an inside job? Did he want to end the Vietnam War? Did he want to break up the CAA like it was implied in the movie? Or do you take this and just say, okay, it's Hollywood, whatever, suspension of disbelief?
I would say that like when you see a a history movie, you want to use that as a lesson.
You would, yeah. And you
Even
want
though
to use
it's
that as a
Hollywood,
reference, yeah.
either way you kind of interpret like that way.
It almost goes into your history file bank.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
When-
also, someone might argue that that's why documentaries exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you can find all the historical accuracy in a documentary, but when you go to see a movie, it's kind of like making it watchable.
Actually, there is an interview with Michael Bay he said something like that. He said that if he didn't put like a love story, like he wouldn't get people's attention.
Yeah.
Like it would be like if the Titanic didn't have the romance, it would be just like a story about the sinking boat.
Them making the boat, it sinking, and then everyone's
Yeah,
No
like,
Jack or anything.
Yeah.
No, most erotic moment of
Yeah.
my life.
Don't say the same.
When Jack drew me naked. It's like, okay, girl, you're like how old and you're telling your granddaughter this?
Yeah, so the Pearl Harbor movie would be just like a bombing movie.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of, I mean, based on all the 4 films that we've talked about, I mean, there are some historical inaccuracies. Abraham Lincoln was the president, but was he actually a vampire hunter?
Who knows?
Like, mine was an actual queen of France. The boudoir or whatever she was. Whatever she was. Like, was she really that into herself, or all she really wanted to do was to get the nicest trees, the nicest clothes, and just
Donut.
let everyone else eat cake?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Even though she's eating all the cake in the kingdom. At this time in the movie.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor, it's I wouldn't say it's inaccurate. It has some truth, but it's not very explored.
Yeah.
That's a good
Like,
explanation.
they get right up to the cusp of them having it, and then they just completely left field.
So
Right.
it's literally like a background story. So what comes out of the movie is like, go do your research.
Mhm.
Go see what's true and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Yeah.
the CIA or did the government really want to take out JFK? Read about it and find out.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. Who knows?
Alright.
That's
Thank
our part.
you.
Thank you very much for listening, and have an awesome day.